All right. Hey, good afternoon, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Friday, July 5th, 2024. This is your afternoon update on Hurricane Beryl, our only player in the Atlantic Basin this afternoon. The Hurricane Center has killed off what was following Beryl, so this is our only player left in town. We do have some updates for you on the latest forecast. Beryl is over land. The storm made landfall about 6:30 this morning near Cozumel, Mexico. Maximum sustained winds were 110 miles per hour. The storm was able to intensify pretty impressively for a few hours south of Cuba and then kind of leaned back towards what was expected to some degree. But in essence, Beryl did come into the Yucatan stronger than forecast and a bit more north than forecast. So we're watching that for potential changes down the road. And the bottom line for today is that the threat for Texas has increased over the last day or two, and now we are more than likely going to see a South Texas landfall or a Central Texas landfall somewhere from Matagorda Bay down to about South Padre Island appears to be the target for Beryl over the next couple of days. So let's go ahead and show you the latest National Hurricane Center 10 a.m. advisory, Central Daylight Time. Maximum sustained winds 85 miles per hour. Movement to the west-northwest at 16 miles per hour. So Beryl is still a hurricane at this hour. It is forecast to be a tropical storm when it moves off the Yucatan this afternoon. But if you notice, the exit point is much further north. We were generally expecting this to come in further south and drive across more of the Yucatan and dump out into the Gulf tonight. But again, the storm decided to cut a bit more northward, and it's going to spend less total time over land. That doesn't look like a huge difference on the map, but it is a big difference for two reasons. Number one, there's physically less land for the core to travel. The other thing we have going on is that more of Beryl is going to stay offshore and be able to pull up some of this warm water and still feed itself to some degree. So with that in mind, Beryl will weaken, but we are not expecting possibly as much weakening as we were going to see. Now, in a bit of good news, the hurricane hunters did find out as the storm moved in, it was much weaker. The structure was much worse than it looked earlier in the day. So Beryl is going to have to take some time to rebuild itself coming off of the Yucatan. The HWRF model shows this pretty well. We have it leaving land tonight. And then this is a low and mid-level chart put together. So the wind barbs are 700 millibars or mid-level. The stamping is low-level. So low-level vortex here, mid-level vortex way up here. Significant decoupling and vortex tilt, which means that the storm is not going to be aligned and it's not going to be able to spin as easily. For a reference here, if you were to spin a top, if it's leaning heavily, it kind of wobbles and it doesn't spin very fast or very well. But if it's standing straight up and spinning perfectly balanced, that's what it wants, right? Well, the hurricane's going to behave in the same way. So when the vortexes are not aligned, the storm doesn't spin, it doesn't generate thunderstorms as efficiently. And the HWRF shows this process. See how the low and mid-level center just keeps wobbling around, but they don't quite align until about midday on Saturday when, boom, these begin to actually stack up on each other. HWRF sees that structural process complete sometime Saturday midday, and then the big storm begins to deepen from there. Now, the rate of strengthening isn't that bad at the start, but then notice right about here as it gets towards landfall, the pressure begins to fall much faster. And I want to point out that the Hurricane Center, not explicitly showing this, but they do show this becoming a hurricane again by Sunday morning and then landfalling as a hurricane Monday morning. But this last like 8 to 12 hours before landfall, you're going to have the potential here for Beryl to have finished the structural processes, to be over some very nice warm water, and to beginning to feel the outflow aloft from this upper level trough that's going to be pulling it towards Texas. This should begin to ventilate the hurricane. And showing you the GFS right here, you can see here that the environment, the outflow environment's already improving. This big upper level divergence from the storm is showing that the environment is improving, and the little the upper level low that was giving it some wind shear is already backing off. So as this moves through, the storm moves out into the Gulf, it's reorganizing, but look right about here, this trough starts pulling out that air away from it, and I'm concerned that that last 10, 12 hours before landfall, Beryl could spin up into an impressive hurricane before it makes landfall. But all the track guidance, like the European model here and the ensemble models, are all showing that landfall in Texas now, again, confidently predicted somewhere north or south of Corpus Christi. So the storm's going to have plenty of warm water to work with. No reason for that. You know, the oceanic heat content isn't super impressive, but it's not terrible by any stretch. And the water is plenty warm enough in the upper level environment. Like we look on the water vapor, other than this little upper trough, which is already backing away from the storm, there's not much in the Gulf of Mexico that's going to slow this storm down. So bottom line, guys, if you were in Texas, this is what we're going to see. The storm's going to come off the Yucatan tonight. It's going to take probably until about tomorrow afternoon to fix itself, structurally rebuild, reorganize, not really strengthen, just kind of put everything back together, okay? And then Saturday night through Sunday morning, we could see some intensification. And then from Sunday morning until Monday morning, we may start seeing a quicker rate or possibly a rapid rate of intensification before it actually makes landfall. So there's a concern here for a fairly significant hurricane to impact the Texas coastline. The Hurricane Center is not saying major hurricane. They're saying probably about category 1 to 2 at this point. I'm saying the potential for category 3 is still on the table. That's a personal thing. Take it for whatever size of grain of salt you want to take it with. I still think there's some potential here for that. And again, not liking to fearmonger and say silly stuff to say it, but folks in Texas, you need to be watching this one carefully. This could be a very nasty strike if the storm has time to reorganize. It has proven time and time again to be resilient and to just have that core that doesn't quit, and you never want to count a storm like this out. So big winds, big rain, big surge. The storm could be a lot bigger than we're seeing it right now by the time it comes in. That could really up the storm surge. We're going to get the Hurricane Center is going to probably put out a hurricane watch at 5 o'clock this afternoon. We'll have all those updates and more on the page. So we'll be back tomorrow. We'll start talking impacts in a little more detail. We'll fine-tune some of this stuff, and we'll see how it looks tomorrow, guys. So until then, that's all I got for you. Stay safe. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.